Mr. Knight prepares to take a journey. M. Matulovich versus R. Fisher, Vinkovsky, 1968. And now king takes e7, and I was looking at this, and the engine prefers this over queen takes, after which it's apparently equal after queenside castle. I'm not going to look at that too much, but if king takes and queenside castle, then knight to f6 wins the bishop. So king takes e7 and queen d2. Threatening rook takes g3 because of the pin. This guards the pawn. Alternatively, if rook to c1, then rook takes b3. White's play is almost comical. His c-pawn is being assaulted, his pieces are cowering on the second rank, and his bishop is a tall pawn. Life is far nicer from black's point of view. He's dominating the game, his heavy pieces are mercilessly punishing white, and his knight will prove to be far stronger than the bishop. In fact, since c2 is the target, the knight would like to join in the hunt. Always do your best to get all your pieces working for the same goal. If you could drop your knight on a fine support point where it gives a slap to c2, what square would that be? Clearly, the answer is d4. And the road to d4 is knight f6 to d7 to b8 to c6 to d4. Or in some cases, knight f6 to h7 to g5 to e6 to d4. That's a long journey, but white is helpless and the rewards are enormous. If the knight gets to d4, white's game would do an immediate belly flop. g6, exclaim. The knight wants to go on a trip, but at the moment it's defending the h5 pawn. After g6, h5 is solidly defended and the horse is ready to head for greener pastures. This push to g6 also sets up a different knight journey. Alternatively, instead of g6, possible is also h5, h4. When g4 runs into knight f6 to h7 to g5 to e6, and onwards either to d4, f4. If h5, h4 is met by g takes h4, then knight h5 to f4 is a nightmare for white. But g6 was played. In every case, the knight has to go on a trip if it wants to reach the really juicy squares, but it's clearly a trip well worth taking. Bishop f1. White sees the enemy knight stands to d4, and realizes that he'll need his bishop to defend c2 if he wants that pawn to survive. Unfortunately, the bishop retreat has weakened the e4 pawn. Queen to d4. Black is suffering from a wealth of riches. Also strong was h4. If g takes h4, knight h5 is another form of death by knight. And now knight h7 to g5 to e6 does the trick. So queen d4 instead of h4. Alternatively, instead of f3, etc. Rook e3. h4 was also extremely strong. However, Fischer has seen a clear winning sequence and happily goes for it. No better is queen f2, when black has the pleasant choice of rook takes e4, if pawn takes, the queen hangs and the rook defends the queen. Or also here h4, when g4 is ravaged by knight takes e4 exclam. And if bishop takes, then queen takes queen. And if king g2, then rook h2. Material is absorbed and further resistance proved futile. Zero one. Summary. In a way, a bishop versus knight battle is a pretty clear-cut thing. Here are the basics. For the owner of the bishop, make it as active as possible by placing it on a free diagonal. or creating an uncluttered diagonal if one doesn't already exist. Prove that it's performing a key function and is thus extremely useful. Steer things into an endgame where the long-range capabilities of the bishop give it a huge edge over the enemy knight. Don't allow the enemy knight to find its way to an advanced permanent support point. This calls for anti-knight strategy. Do your best to take away all advanced squares from the enemy horse. For the owner of the knight, closing the position is often good for your knight. Steer for endgames where all the pawns are on one side of the board. This negates the enemy bishop's long-range abilities while amplifying the importance of the knight's ability to attack both white and dark squares. Do your best to create a permanent advanced home support point for your knight. If a tasty support point exists but it seems a long way away, and perhaps impossible to reach, try hard to find a way to get there. It might take several moves, but that's what moves are for, to place your pieces on their best squares so they can exert maximum effect on the board. Avoid trapped knight syndrome. Many a knight has been lost when it found itself trapped by the enemy bishop. Anti-bishop pair formula. In the case of two bishops versus a bishop and knight, the simplest way to remove the opponent's bishop pair is to exchange one of the enemy bishops, either by trading your knight or bishop for an enemy bishop, thus creating a far more manageable bishop versus knight or bishop versus bishop situation. Two knights don't work particularly well together, so exchanging one of them for an enemy bishop or knight is usually a good idea.